Chapter 3, Freedom Defined. A woman also wants to be free. Of course, the word freedom is ambiguous. For most women, to be free means not to feel trapped, hemmed in, not to be forced to be someone she is not so as to conform to someone else's idea of what a woman should be. In the Christian sense, freedom is liberation from sin, which enables one to love more fully. This chapter focuses on key traits of freedom: spontaneity and daring versus repression or folly, strength to lead versus passivity or domineeringness, objectivity versus subjectivity or cold analysis. These positive traits of freedom we will see support a woman's femininity. In subsequent chapters of this section, we will investigate the roots of freedom and consider two methods offered in our times for gaining greater freedom for women: feminism and Jungian wholeness. Traits of freedom. Here are some words that people associate with freedom. Check the ones you think describe you. Circle the ones you wish described you. Adventuresome, ambitious, assertive, authoritative, brave, cold, competitive, daredevilish, daring, decisive, domineering, driving, firm, forceful, initiating, just, leading, logical, loud, lustful, objective, proud, ruthless, self-controlled, spontaneous, strong, stubborn, tough, and valiant. Generally, people consider the following to be positive descriptors of free women: adventuresome, assertive, authoritative, brave, daring, decisive, driving, firm, forceful, initiating, just, leading, logical, objective, self-controlled, spontaneous, strong, tough, and valiant. Famous women who have exhibited some of these traits include Esther, Deborah, Judith, St. Catherine of Siena, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Joan of Arc, Harriet Tubman, Amelia Earhart, Eleanor Roosevelt, Rose Kennedy, Golda Meir. You can probably add many more. The following are negative descriptives of free women: ambitious, cold, competitive, daredevilish, domineering, loud, lustful, proud, ruthless, stubborn. Examples of women who have exhibited some of these negative traits include Herodias, who ordered the beheading of John the Baptist; Livia, the scheming Roman dowager of the time of the Caesars; Lady Macbeth, and Lucrezia Borgia. The nature of freedom. Freedom can be defined in several ways: exemption or liberation from control by another person or some arbitrary power. Liberty equals independence, ease of performance, openness, unrestrictedness. Philosophers like to speak of the difference between freedom from and freedom to. Freedom far from implies absence of coercion. We strive to be free from the will of tyrants, slave drivers, totalitarian states. During World War II, there was a popular German song, Die Gedanken sind frei, thoughts are free. Its theme was that no amount of external force could control one's thoughts. Women naturally want to feel free from such extreme forms of enslavement as forced marriages, rape, or battery. Women want to be free from demeaning judgments, keeping them in unfulfilling roles. Freedom to, or liberty, implies more, involves the power to bring about what is good. This depends not only on the absence of coercion, but also on the interior strength to be an instrument of the good. Hence, it depends on freedom from enslavement to our own psychological complexes or vices. In this sense, women hope to develop their talents and virtues to promote improvement in the family, society, and the church. Without a philosophy of human nature and clear-cut goals, freedom can become trivial or dangerous. In these cases, it is called whimsy or license. Let us look at some elements from the free personality to see how these can be integrated with the feminine. Spontaneity. We think of a woman as repressed or conformist if she's unable to act in a spontaneous and daring manner. We do not applaud a woman whose actions are foolhardy or silly, but we very much enjoy the company of a woman with flair. Consider the contrast between the two main women characters of the popular movie, The Sound of Music. The sophisticated middle-aged baroness who hopes to marry Captain Von Trapp is not only manipulative but fake and also stiff and conformist. Maria is spontaneous, creative, and daring. At first, these qualities of the younger woman frightened her somewhat unimaginative employer, but gradually they delight and rejuvenate him. It is easy to see that spontaneity is an ingredient of feminine charm. It helps prevent natural charm from congealing into studied manipulation. Strength to lead. Leaders require the freedom of real strength. The word leader should not be interpreted too narrowly. Queens and prime ministers are leaders, but so are mothers. A writer or artist may be a leader, but so is a teacher. Passive, weak, dependent women lack such freedom. Domineering women appear to be strong, but really lack freedom. It is insecurity that motivates them to try to control persons and situations. Strength is important for nurturing warm feminine qualities to triumph over the fear that comes from weakness. How often in the tragic story of an abortion, we find a nice young woman eager to be loving, too weak to avoid premarital sex, too frightened to seek the help of her parents, too weak to discover the discomfort of pregnancy in order to give up the baby for adoption, and certainly too fearful to fend for herself as a single parent. Strength of character would have complemented her warm disposition and helped her to say no to sex or afterwards to make the sacrifices necessary to help rather than destroy her baby. Objectivity. Another aspect of the free personality is objectivity. To use freedom to choose the good, one must know what is really beneficial in life. Objectivity is not synonymous with the negative, often masculine traits of being cold, over-analytical, and critical. These personality defects arise not so much from a love of truth, but from the desire to dominate, perhaps because of an exaggerated fear of making mistakes or to show superiority. Without objectivity, a woman's choices can often be unrealistically sentimentally or easily influenced by others. Men sometimes ridicule women's decision-making processes because women do not always use objective means to arrive at truth. A fine example would be Lucy Ricardo in I Love Lucy. Lucy is full of charm, but this positive feminine trait gets swamped in her silly lack of realism. On the other hand, the intuition of women's strong and common sense and even further in contact with the deepest realities is rich and fruitful. A contrasting television character would be Olivia, the wife and mother of the Waltons. Roots of freedom. Most women who want to achieve more freedom want to be stronger. Often we think of strength as a masculine trait. As mentioned in the chapter Femininity, Men on the average are physically bigger and stronger. In the past, women have been considered members of the weaker sex. Today, some women are battling this stereotype, either pointing to strengths inherent in women's physical and spiritual makeup or competing in man's domain. For example, most women live longer than men. Women also have their own kind of strength, the physical potency for nurturing a baby in the womb and at the breast. What should we make of the issue of strength then? Let us further explore the polarity of strength and weakness. Psychologically, some women become tough as they battle against the men in their lives who can be brutal. Because they detest being enslaved or bullied, these women develop their physical and emotional strength to a competitive level, sometimes gaining power at the expense of the feminine qualities of warmth and charm. Because of the superior muscular strength of men and the subordinate roles women play in many cultures, women strive to triumph over feelings of weakness and vulnerability. The woman realizes that in this process she may have to sacrifice the secularity, the security, the approval and protection of men that comes from assuming secondary roles. It is clear from the chapter on the feminine, it is not my contention that women should not play helping roles. However, women should come to these complementary endeavors with peaceful strength, not servile dependency. A ghastly case of dependency and vulnerability, which played to a tragic last act, was the center of public attention in 1980. Jean Harris, a successful 56-year-old career woman, presumably killed the man who had been her lover for 14 years because of his affair with a younger woman. She had first tried to kill herself. In a fascinating article about the way American women passionately identified with Jean Harris, writer Erica Beale pointed out the threat this story poses to the new feminists. Before this event, Jean Harris might have represented the new independent woman that many wished to become. Since she had accepted a lifestyle that was free from commitments, she chose a love affair over the stodgy realities of marriage. Why was Jean Harris not strong enough to accept the consequences? In some bottom layer, Jean Harris, wasn't the modern self-reliant woman she appeared. Later, she would lack the resources, toughness, and coolness essential to that role. Harris had the trappings of independence, but they overlaid dangerous residues from the past, like the inability to make work the sustaining center it must be if you plan to go it alone, like the tendency to place not work but a man, one man at the center of your life. Beale, 1981, page 50. In trying to evaluate true versus false strength, let us go a bit more systematically into the negative aspects of vulnerability, so opposed to true freedom. One form of weakness found sometimes among North American women, but more frequently in certain other cultures, is passivity. In the face of life's difficulties and seemingly inexorable sufferings, a woman can adopt an attitude of false resignation, achieving peace by expecting little and enduring all. The price paid for male support is total submission. Of course, such passivity may stimulate negative masculine traits of cruelty. In No Exit, 1949, Jean-Paul Sartre's anti-hero Gassan describes how his wife's servile passivity disgusts him. He commits worse and worse sins against marital love to arouse her anger. Finally, he brings a prostitute right into their spousal bed and forces his wife to serve them breakfast the next morning. To give up hope like this may seem slavish to women with independent natures, but the motive may not be to idolize the oppressor. It may be an attempt to find one's own equilibrium by refusing to react. In the problem of wife battering, defined as serious or repeated physical injury as a result of deliberate assaults by her spouse, we can find passivity reinforced by social inequality. Hilberman, 1980, page 1337. In 1968, 20% of the population in the United States approved of wife beating, and 40% of all female homicide victims were killed by their husbands. Why would any woman put up with physical abuse? Many were afraid to leave their homes, not only because their spouses threatened reprisal, but also because they lacked support for themselves and their children. Accustomed to defining themselves dependently, they cannot imagine fending for themselves in the outside world. In religiously oriented women, such fears can be hidden by a veneer of martyrdom in the name of bearing a cross for the Lord. Instead of fighting against injustice or accepting it valiantly as an offering to God, some, quote, martyrs, unquote, instead see passive resignation as less terrifying than taking a stand. In the middle and upper classes, another form of passivity can be found among parasitic women. Esther Villar in The Manipulated Man, excerpted in Mayerwald, 1983, humorously describes the way in which many women avoid intellectual challenges and relax into the torpor of repetitive housewifely existence. By the age of 12 at the latest, most women have decided to become prostitutes. Which, put it another way, they have planned a future for themselves which consists of choosing a man and letting him do all the work. In return for his support, they are prepared to let him make use of their vagina at certain given moments. The minute a woman has made this decision, she ceases to develop her mind, rarely using the time she has gained by the inventions of men to lessen housework, take an active interest in history, politics, or astrophysics. Woman bakes cakes, irons underclothes, and makes ruffles and frills for blouses. Or if she is especially enterprising, covers her bathroom with flower decals. Bearing in mind that this satiric account is not about busy mothers of small children, but leisurely women without children, or women with many helpers. Germaine Greer in The Female Eunuch draws a biting caricature of the stereotype of the fashion ads, a sterile, unreal woman whose only concern is to create an image of glamour. In that mysterious dimension where the body meets the soul, the stereotype is born and has her being. To her belongs all that is beautiful. All that exists to beautify her. The sun shines only to burnish her skin and gild her hair. The wind blows only to whip up the color of her cheeks. The sea strives to bathe her. Flowers die gladly so that her skin may luxuriate in their essence. Baby seals are battered with stains. Unborn lambs ripped from their mother's wombs. Millions of moles, muskrats, squirrels, minks, and other small and lovely creatures die untimely deaths that she might have furs. That's Greer, 1971, page 47. If passivity is incompletely achieved, a woman may find herself without the strength to act meaningfully in the world, but unable to resign herself to the sufferings that afflict her. Simone de Beauvoir, 1952, writes that finding the world menacing but outside her control, the woman worries instead of acts. Since everything happens to her through the agency of others, she develops a psychology of complaint and rage. Sometimes because she refuses to assume responsibility, she does not see the world in its complexity, but instead as pure good, herself and those closest to her, versus pure evil, they. Hysteria, in the popular sense of the term, uncontrolled rage, can be a woman's way of constantly accusing those who dominate her. In this aggressive, passive behavior, a woman will make a tremendous fuss that everyone around her must share in her discomfort, yet she never assertively acts to change her bad situation. Negative feminine intellectual traits such as silliness and naivete can be related to passivity. Unwilling to take the trouble to study and analyze the world around her, a woman may instead adopt a set of oversimplified cliches or childish excuses for ignorance. Sometimes very intelligent women lapse into silliness as a ruse to avoid losing masculine affection. It has been shown that many more women than men introduce ideas with disclaimers such as, "I really don't know much about this, but here is one idea, just my own opinion," instead of forthrightly and confidently proclaiming an idea. Much more active displays of weakness include clinging, obsession, and idol worship. Here is how negative intellectual traits can feed into these other negative emotional traits. A woman without a strong focus, according to Ada Stein, tends to nibble in all directions, seeking wholeness. She is unable to develop one gift thoroughly because she lacks confidence. Such an uncomfortable state of existence easily propels a woman toward anyone who appears to have direction and power. How thrilling to ride the tail of the comet. How meaningful to be part of the life of a man who is going somewhere. Freud thought all women lacked libido and could only find fulfillment through living vicariously off the life energies of another, a male, a stronger female, or a child, achieving this by the proximity that comes with slavish devotion. Negative feminine traits such as manipulativeness come into play here as the woman seeks to secure the presence of her idol. Simone de Beauvoir incisively points out that even if the man is asked to give nothing in return for the woman's undying affection, he is still being forced to give up his own freedom of movement to be present, to receive the numerous material and emotional gifts the woman wants so much to indulge him with. Resentment and spite often follow idol worship once the clay feet become visible. The European psychotherapist Ida Goris says that to men, women seem like prowling time bombs tied to a particular man as his lover, wife, secretary, or assistant. The disappointed woman seeks ways to vent her anger at his failure to live up to her dreams of his perfection. The love relationships of some male homosexuals, those of an effeminate nature, display similar patterns. In extreme cases, a woman's sense of self becomes so deficient through years of dependence that she will decide to commit suicide if she is threatened with the loss of her worshipped male idol. Of course, there can be other reasons, such as abandonment in early childhood, why the loss of a love object can seem devastating. In any case, how tragic to throw away the whole world with all its beauty, goodness, and promise for the love of one puny mortal. Rightly, a psychologist dealing with a patient, female or male, who wants to take his own life because of unrequited love, looks not at the cruelty of the rejecting party, but at the lack of self-esteem and narrowness of emotional focus of the suicidal person. Given such shipwreck, is it any wonder that people tried to hide their vulnerability behind a mask of pseudo-strength? Two principal contemporary ideologies seek to strengthen women in their battle against their own feeling of weakness: feminism and the wholeness theory. We will explore these philosophies and their practical applications, and we will cite relevant thinkers of the past. These two movements will also be evaluated for their positive and negative features.